It's time for Deploy on Friday for Friday, March 10th, 2023. Joining me on the show again, as always, is Jim Pelletier. Jim, how are things down in Melbourne?
Yeah, really good, really good. Summer's coming to an end though.
What have you been working on this week? Anything interesting?
We're on a big journey at the moment to really have a look at some of the really internal backends of Octopus. Probably have more to say on that space a little later on, but
Ooh,
yeah,
a teaser.
yeah,
I like it.
yeah.
Yeah, we've got lots of stuff on the go at the moment. Some things we've shipped, some things we are about to ship, and some things we will ship. So hopefully stay tuned for that. As always, we try to post everything up on our blog or our Twitter feed. So please make sure to subscribe to those if you can. This is the show where Jim and I track the news and tech trends during the week, and we present them. And it's kind of a lighthearted show. So if you haven't already done so, please like and subscribe this video. It really helps us out. First and foremost, we have actually gone and published a whole bunch of videos on our YouTube channel. So if you aren't aware, we actually do have a YouTube channel. You can go ahead and subscribe to that if you'd like. Earlier, I posted this one talking about the command line being cool again. I did an interview with Nicholas Blumhardt, who's the founder and CEO of a company called Datalust. They produce a product called Seek. And you may know him from the .NET space. He was involved in Serilog and in AutoFac. I also spoke to John Daniel Trask. He's the founder and CEO of a company called Raygun. They're based in New Zealand. And we got talking about application monitoring and observability. So that was fun. We have a bunch of interviews also lined up. So I've interviewed Troy Hunt, and I've interviewed Damian Brady and Thomas Lee. And so lots and lots of stuff is going up there. So make sure to check that out if you're at all interested. All right, let's get on with the news of the week. This was one that I was really excited about. So Visual Studio 2022 has been out for a bit, and we're getting a whole bunch of updates as part of that version of Visual Studio. And recently, there was an update for the 17.5 release that included a whole bunch of performance enhancements. Jim, did you get a chance to take a look at these? Have you? You're a rider guy, I know, but
I'm a rider guy.
Ride or die on the rider.
Ride or die guy. Yeah, that's right. So, yeah. Sometimes we do miss a few features over there, but
yeah. Well, maybe the improvements that have been made recently might convert you over. So, one, for a big release like this, obviously they want to perform it. They want to make sure they performance tune everything. So lots of improvements around loading of .NET SDK style projects. So you can see that build acceleration of build time for those projects. External sources decompilation. So they do a comparison between 17.4 and 17.5. Threads window has been improved as well. So if you're at all interested, you can take a look at the response time that the window redraws here, as opposed to 17.4. That's a really useful one. Although I would admit that's a really tricky one to get right. If you're doing anything low level, you'll understand that stuff. But if you're doing anything high level, looking at the threads window isn't going to really help too much. So yeah, but that's good to see. Quick add item. So if this is, adding a new item to your solution, this is always a constant pain. So they've made that a little bit better, which is fantastic, especially for larger projects. That's always been a pain. And then improvements around Razor and C#. So in particular, improving the ability for actions within a Razor file, which is always a good thing. Razor files are tough, right? Because you're mix and matching various markup and languages all together. So I have some sympathy for the compiler writers who are supporting this, but how's this experience in Rider? I'm not a Rider user myself, but what's this like?
I don't write a lot of Razor, to be honest, so I haven't got a lot of experience with it, but I have similar experiences to you. Language services, no matter what the platform, I've always struggled when you're interleaving two different syntaxes in one file. I think it's a real struggle, especially if they're different like language paradigms as well.
Yeah, good point. Code coverage, significant improvements to code coverage. So this is one where you're running your tests to see, you want to get that as high level percentage as possible. So they've done a lot of improvements there in terms of running those code coverage unit tests and then getting a result back. I love this comparison. This is sort of akin to what we saw with all the Apple demos back in the day when they would show like Safari versus other mobile browsers, for example. But that's a pretty significant improvement. So 35% faster now with the 17.5 release. So lots of improvements there, and definitely would encourage, if you're running Visual Studio, go and download the latest update. If you're running Rider like Jim, have a look. Maybe consider
it's really making me have second thoughts right now. At the moment, I can't even step into external code with my debugger because of it's actually a problem in the .NET libraries for M1 Max. But gee, seeing that they're already focused on performance improvements for decompiling external code.
What's going on there with the M1? Why would the M1 cause you grief?
I don't know what it is, but there's an open issue in the .NET runtime repository that's stepping into. It's more. I think it's something to do with the debugger stepping into remote code, or turning off remote code decompilation is a workaround to try and avoid the issue.
I see.
But yeah, I think because the M1's just a new architecture, they're still finding bugs with it. So
that makes sense. Running on the Apple Silicon would cause definitely some challenges, obviously, because the bytecode is different. So everything's different, basically. That makes sense. This is a new event that has been introduced by GitHub. GitHub Galaxy is coming March 28th to the 31st, and it will focus on those folks who are using GitHub in an enterprise context or enterprise space. Basically, folks, if you're running GitHub or GitHub Enterprise and you're a large organization, this is going to be the event for you. So they announced this. It's got a registration page. It's going to be available as a virtual event, and they've got a lot of sessions that you can go and check out. So this is in addition to, I believe, GitHub Universe, and then there's another GitHub one that I'm forgetting right now. Something constant. I don't know. There's some other event. So they're all based on stars and space and all that sort of stuff. So GitHub Galaxy, March 28th to the 31st. We'll focus on a variety of topics, mostly notable ones for enterprises like security, reliability, et cetera, et cetera. So you can go ahead and register up for that today. The sessions are available online. Let's see what happens if I click on this. All right, so this is the main page. This is the GitHub Galaxy page. So you can go to galaxy.github.com. 25 plus speakers, 19 plus sessions, 3 plus regions. So you can see the event schedule here. Here we go. So we got a keynote, and then we've got various sessions on developer productivity. I'm imagining they're going to talk about code spaces, developer experience. What else? Security measures. They'll talk about probably like code QL and using GitHub Actions effectively, etc. Efficient and collaborative. So harness your organization's productivity from day one. Enterprise-ready tools. So they've got a few folks who are participating in that. So definitely worth checking out. Just yet another set of sessions worth checking out. And again, the fact that it's virtual allows you to go ahead and watch those remotely. Are you a big fan of the virtual events, or are you more of an in-person fan?
I tend to find that I'll go to in-person events more. Once you commit to it, you're sort of like, oh, okay, I'll go.
I'm here anyway.
The virtual events I like sign up for, and then I just kind of don't quite make it often.
Yeah. I'm with you. I'm so bad. I've gone to so many events now that usually what I'll do is I'll go to an event and then I'll just hang out in the hallway the whole time, just talking to people. And they'll be like, "Aren't you going to sessions?" I'm like, they're recorded. I'll go watch them later at home. So.
But it is great having things like this online. I mean, especially for those of us outside the US region, having access to this is awesome.
What are you talking about? Us down here in the world's basement in Australia? We don't get a lot of conferences. What are you talking about? No, he's right. So down here in Australia, we don't get as many conferences as the folks up in the US do, which is awesome for them. But the fact that we've got the internet and YouTube and all kinds of other video channels now means we get to participate either virtually or otherwise. So cool. Sticking with GitHub issues and projects. This is an update, minor updates here, but I thought I'd mention it anyway. So this is their changelog blog. This is basically minor updates, but I thought it would be interesting. I passed this over into the internal Slack, and I thought it would be interesting because our teams at Octopus use GitHub constantly. So, I mean, I can't think of how we've got so many repos now in our proper org. Then we've got sub orgs as well. So we've got like orgs like Octopus Deploy labs and samples and things like that. So we use GitHub a lot is what I'm saying. And so anytime there's a change with GitHub, I'm like all over it because I know that it's going to affect our workflow. So first and foremost, automatically add and archive project items. So here you can see you've got an auto adding for projects. So are you a fan of the project view? Do you use projects view at all?
I don't use projects, no.
Yeah. How do you guys manage the projects on your teams? Do you guys use something else?
Yeah, we use a product called Shortcut.
Yep. Cool.
Yep. So that's what we use for our sort of our workflow tracking and stuff.
Yeah. The nice thing about Shortcut and other tools like that is they give you really nice cross-project views. So you can see from a top-down kind of like what everyone's working on. And I think it would be nice if GitHub offered something. They do have capabilities of doing things like that, but it's difficult. And I think GitHub's really well aligned for the projects themselves. I find that are really well aligned on a repo by repo basis. But as soon as you go up that one level, it just becomes a little bit kind of hard to manage, I find. So anyway, tracklist improvements. So this is part of an ongoing private beta for tracklist. So they're showing completion pills now for issues. So this is nice. This is a very popular sort of UI pattern you see, these pills. And so you can basically annotate your tasks now with them, and then they give a little bit of zing or color to your task list, which are always really, it's the most boring thing that you can possibly come up with as a task list. But being able to color code them is a nice thing. So pills are good. So I like that. And then finally, edit issue metadata directly from the task list. So this one is obviously good for defining taxonomies and things like that, which is always hard for tasks because let's face it, you can have so many different tasks that it can be a bit of a nightmare. They have other various fixes, improvements, but nothing major. So that's the latest and greatest in regards to issues and tasks. And that's now live, which is awesome.
I'll tell you what, though, in the last couple of weeks, I feel like I'm lagging behind a couple of weeks in these updates. Just last week, it seems the new code view and the new code search features, which we talked about like a week or two ago, have all popped up in our main repository, and they're amazing.
Yeah, GitHub's moving really fast. I don't know about you, but like I'm constantly going to their blog, and I'm like, guys, slow down. Like this is crazy. And when you go into your GitHub profile, or when you're signed into GitHub, on the right-hand side, they always have the latest updates. And I'm amazed how often that thing gets refreshed. I'm like, this is nuts, like how quick you guys are going. So yeah, kudos to them. I love updates like this. It helps, of course, when you're providing a SaaS-based product. Of course, you can move quickly. Yeah, but I'm really, really impressed by all the improvements they made. So that's great. How is the code search working? I've used it a ton. I just haven't used it recently with the latest updates. Have you used it yet?
Yeah, what I'm really loving about it is we spend a lot of time sending links around of pieces of code to each other when we're talking about code in Slack or in a document or something. Yeah. And what I'm loving about it now is that it used to be a link to just a pretty uninteractive file, and you could get a link to a line of code, but finding the context around that code was a bit harder. Now, when I open those links, I'm zoomed into the code that the person's talking about, but I've also got a file view on the left so I can start to navigate around. And I've also got some symbol links and some search results on the right for the method or object or whatever that we're talking about as well. So I can start to see where else it's used.
So here's an example.
Yeah, this is that stuff with symbols on the right.
Yeah. So this is the code for the Go API client library that we have, and what Jim was referring to is this little box that appears on the right hand side. Now it shows you your symbols, and so you can navigate basically your definitions for anything. So it's pretty slick. I like it. So you have the tree view on the left, you've got the code in the middle, and then on the right you've got a variety of panes as well. So you're a fan of this?
Yeah, love it. It's making my life a lot easier. Yeah,
sweet.
We're doing some deep excavation at the moment, and it's really helping us find our way around.
Yep. Got to find where all the parts and pieces live, which is great.
Yeah.
Sticking with GitHub, they have recently put out a blog post earlier today talking about how 2FA or two-factor authentication begins on March 13th. Now, don't worry. You have until the end of this year to make sure you have this enabled. And at Octopus, we've been ahead of the curve here. So I just synced with our security team just to remind them, hey, and they're like, yeah, we're our minimum profile enforces this, so we're good. But for those folks who are watching this and thinking, oh, I need to make sure that my organization is using this. So 2FA is integrated and allows you to basically provide something that you have or something that you know, which is one of the essence of two-factor authentication. They do support SMS and a auth provider. I would recommend that you use an authenticator or an auth provider as opposed to an SMS, because obviously it's a little bit more secure. You're not as susceptible to the SMS attacks that can occur. But you should enroll through a second factor authentication method. So I use what do I use? I use combination of Authy and then Microsoft Authenticator. Those seem to be the canonical ones. And
Authy's what I tend to use as well.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, I like it a lot. It's just it's so simple, and then it depends on where you are. Like if you're on a Mac, for example, they have their own sort of auth mechanism as well. But because they have devices, I mean, it makes it easy. But so just be aware that if you are on GitHub, which most people are, that GitHub is rolling this out, and they're making it basically a long rollout, but with enough runway so that you can take it, you can start making sure that your organization is ready. So two-factor authentication, just as a reminder, everyone, this is beginning March 13th as far as a rollout of their initiative. And then by the end of 2023, I believe, is their tentative fully complete sort of date. Awesome. Jim, I know you're a fan of code coverage.
I'm definitely a fan of code coverage.
And if I were to ask you, what's your code coverage? What sort of numbers do you lie with? Like, what do you think is a believable lie when it comes to code coverage?
A believable lie. I sometimes like to talk about over 100%, but the thing is, sometimes you want to like test one code path like 300%. There's always those edge bits, isn't there, that you can't, you just can't or shouldn't even bother.
1,000,000%. Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
I love code coverage. I'm not a fan of getting to 100%. I think it's a fool's errand. But for those who care, and I do care, but after 80%, I'm good. That's the way I look at it. I think we've talked about this before. But something I missed was that in Go 1.20, the latest version of Go we have, they actually improved the way that you can run code coverage against your tests. So to set the story, Go has some really great tools. So when you download the, I guess, for lack of a better term, SDK, you get the compilers, you get all the mechanisms for doing unit testing. You get, as part of that, there's a test application that you run. So when you run the Go test command, it has a flag on it which is -cover. Now, the way that this is done historically is that these will typically run against a module that you'll have in Go. And the tough part there is, though, that oftentimes the tests that you want to run for code coverage are basically on integrations. So integration tests or E2E tests typically are those ones that are super involving, like everything that you could possibly do. And it's always been a challenge to get a sense of your coverage from that perspective. And so what they've done now is supported this notion of code coverage across all your E2E tests, which is great. And I think it really will help when looking at running these tests against your not only your packages, but against your integration tests, which is great. And this is something I missed. I went through the release notes of 1.20. And I think my brain just kind of went like, yeah, fine. But when they posted this earlier this week, I was like, oh, I must have missed that. So great to see and great to know. And if you're using Go, which I hope you are considering possibly because I like the language, then this is something that should help. Code coverage for Go integration tests. How many messages do you think we store ourselves? Millions, billions? I mean, like when people start pulling out the T word, the trillions, I'm like, okay, it's a bit of a humble brag, or like a bit of an odd flex if you ask me. But this is an article that came out from the Discord folks. Discord, as some folks know, maybe some folks don't know, is a solid competitor to Slack and Teams and these sort of messaging chat applications. And Discord is extremely popular with the cool kids, right? So the game streamers, the Twitch people, folks that use chat, and it's really, really super functional. I like Mattermost as well. So Mattermost, Slack, Teams, Discord. Anyways, it's a chat application. So enough said. Anyways, this was an article where they talked about the application architecture that they had built on Cassandra and some implementation around that. And they were finding that during particular spikes of activity around something like the Super Bowl or the World Cup or something, that they weren't getting the type of latency numbers that they were hoping for, or that it was hard for that, like the amount of nodes they had to have running in order to run Cassandra, for example, seemed a bit excessive. And so this is an engineering blog. I love these blogs, by the way. I don't know about you, but I love the sort of retrospectives not in a bad way, but in a good way, of what we did, how we solved the problem. And so this is an article from Bo, who I assume works at Discord, talking about how they went to Cassandra in 2017, but then they noticed they were having some problems, et cetera. And then when they went about changing the architecture, of course, they implemented part of this in Rust. So it kind of grabbed my attention in that regard. But historically, they had used Cassandra, and then they moved to, intrigued by, I can't even pronounce, I haven't heard of this database, Cilia DB?
Cilia, I would say, yeah.
I don't know. I'm like, there's always like, I feel so bad because like I always like, now my imposter syndrome's coming out. Like, I'm not good enough. I don't know about this database. You know, I'm a loser. No, but I guess this is one that's available. I'd heard of Cassandra. I'd never used Cassandra before, but I'd heard of it. And I guess they were evaluating this and thought it was pretty killer, and so they went about doing that. And then they had a data services layer, basically, and they rebuilt that in Rust, which was cool. And this one was actually kind of a cool statement. It gave us fast C++ speeds without having to sacrifice safety, which is definitely one of the things that they tout, the Rust folks. So definitely something that's worth mentioning there. They go into the sort of architectural patterns, et cetera, a huge migration. Anytime you touch a database or do anything with databases, my God, the amount of migration scripts you have to run. And I mean, we should talk about this, right? We know a thing or two about migration scripts, right?
Yeah, but like the scale on this one is
nothing like us. Come on. So for those folks who don't know, what I'm kind of
different reasons, but
yeah. So we Octopus runs on a SQL backend, as most folks know, if you're an Octopus customer, in case you weren't aware. And so one of the things we do is we constantly evolve our schemas, not intentionally, but sometimes we have to refactor and such. And so you'll see some of those things run during the startup of server. And so we have to run migration scripts all the time. And we do that we do it pretty well, I think, because you can migrate from various versions to other versions, and we'll give you all the migration scripts as part of that. So I think we do a really good job of this. But I like your comment here, not to the same scale, but yeah, of course, I hear what you're saying.
I mean, I think the problems we deal with them really well. Like we don't have a lot of visibility into these migrations running. They're often on a customer's site behind a firewall. So we have to design them to work between multiple versions and run unattended and be rock solid without us helping them along, which is a benefit these guys had. One of my big takeaways from this article, I reckon, is that technology is not the answer. They definitely talked a lot about the different technologies here, but it was the technologies that got them into trouble. It's the architecture that I think really got them out of the hot water here. So,
that's fair. That's fair.
Architecture for the win.
People and process and tools. Is that what you're saying? You're espousing the DevOps philosophy? All right.
That's it.
Go figure. HashiCorp continues on its path to making their tools better and better. They just released Terraform 1.4, which basically improves their CLI experience around cloud. It has another feature, which is basically emitting OPA, or Open Policy Agent runs as well, which is cool. So for those folks who don't know, Terraform is a solution from HashiCorp that allows you to do infrastructure as code. It has a language called HashiCorp Configuration Language, or HCL. And the idea here is that you basically describe a configuration for external resources and systems that you're working with. Octopus has a Terraform provider that you can use. And so Terraform 1.4 basically adds some enhancements to their CLI experience. So one of the things that you would see historically when you would run the CLI, if you ran it with Terraform Cloud, which is their cloud offering, you would only get, if you did a run via the CLI, you would only get the text output. Now they've enhanced that so that you get the same enhanced output that you see typically with a cloud run. So in Terraform Cloud, you get this nice sort of curated sort of UI. And so now that's something that you can use in context of the CLI, which is great. OPA, or Open Policy Agent, is an open specification for describing policy for systems and solutions that support it. So it allows you to describe things like, I need this to be enforced at any time. And policy is kind of one of those nebulous terms, but it's a really effective way of administrators and technical folks to enforce rules on systems that support it. So Open Policy Agent defines this specification for defining these policies. And then now if you have policy runs that are affected as part of this in a Terraform run, these will be emitted as part of that execution. So you can see this is an OPA policy evaluation. You can see it's failed because it's violated a policy here. So we have a policy name called restrict RDP SSH. So I'm imagining they need or require SSH in order to use RDP. And so that's failed in this this apply, I'm assuming. So this is a Terraform apply. So the Terraform has a init, a plan, apply, import, etc., a bunch of commands. When you run an apply, you're basically saying, take this local state and apply it to this remote state. So they now emit those as part of their CLI. They have this resource called a null resource. It's kind of like a no-op, basically, but a null resource is basically, it's a way to establish sort of a sense of a placeholder for stuff when you're doing operations that can be, quote unquote, I guess, tricky. So state evolution, state migrations can be a bit time sensitive, and you can have like race conditions without lockup, but basically like, if this resource gets touched, then there might be a delay. Then I have to do this resource. So a null resource is a way in which you can, it's like a little utility that allows you to provide something that does nothing, basically. It's sort of like a no-op. Yeah, that's right.
Gaffer tape of the DevOps world.
Yep. Yeah, and as I like to say, when presented with a problem, we do as God intended. We hack. And so this is one way to get around this mechanism. So null resource is available there. So you can download the bits there. 1.4 is now available, which is cool. Now, Jim, I know you're a fan. I hate to say it, but I know you're a long-time secretive fan.
We're going to talk about WinForms.
Of WinForms. That's right. That's right. So I know you saw this and you thought, yes, finally I get to talk about WinForms.
I do know some people who will be listening that'll be very happy to hear about that.
Yeah, I know. We've all done our time with WinForms. We've all done our time with VB. I mean, story time, little bit, mini story time. I've worked on a 6 million line application in VB6. So I've got the scar tissue to show it. I didn't write the whole thing initially, but I did work on a project that was like that. I've done tons of WinForms development. I'm assuming you've done WinForms development yourself.
No, I've never had the pleasure, really.
What?
It's been web.
Oh my goodness. No WinForms. Wow. So you didn't have the pleasure of Battleship Grey drag and drop giant red X's and all that.
Maybe some Visual Basic like in high school or something.
Okay.
Like some VB6, but yeah.
All right. Fair enough. Anyway, so the application framework has been around for a bit. They introduced it a while back and what it does is it enables you to take advantage of later versions of .NET. And so this was, as we've had an introduction of new versions, we've gone from 3.1 to 4 to 4, 4.1, 4.2, 4.3, 4.8, et cetera, et cetera. Then we went to 6, then to 7, now 8. And as we evolve the framework, obviously there are features that people want to use, like, for example, Entity Framework. And so these and other capabilities have often been missing for folks who want to continue to use, for good reason, technologies like WinForms and Visual Basic apps, and being able to utilize those capabilities. So this is a technology that allows you to do just that. And so it's really good to introduce these things, because I think that application frameworks like this are vital, because I mean, as much as we want to think that everyone's running F# and React and everyone's kicking out like applications on Vercel, or they're using kind of like serverless and they're using containers, that's not always the case. And in fact, it's probably not the majority of the case. More often than not, people are still cranking out .NET 2, .NET 3.1, WinForms, VB, jQuery, I don't know, things like that, right? So they're still using Angular, they're still using, Angular old, etc., React proper, things like that. So these are important frameworks for folks who want to take a piecemeal approach to migration. And I think this is a good thing. So if you're curious at all, they have this experience exposed through Visual Studio. So this is an example of how this looks within the tool itself. So you can turn on and off various capabilities of the application framework, including like visual styles or other things like, you want to enable the project to take advantage of it. And then from there, you can utilize the various settings that are available, as well as the classes that are exposed through the framework itself. And so this is an article that goes through all the details of the latest versions for the application framework to take advantage of .NET 5, .NET 6, which includes EF, or Entity Framework. which is awesome.
That's a big win.
Yeah, I think so too. So goes into all the details here. I'm not going to basically bore you to death with all the details, but if you are targeting WinForms and you are targeting Visual Basic as part of that, this application framework might help you evolve parts and pieces as you take the journey on the path for evolving your application to the latest and greatest. This was a interesting one that hit my radar today. It's called API Rank. This one was on Hacker News, and I thought it was kind of cool. So API Rank is a single serving site that allows folks to check out various APIs that are public, and it breaks them down in a variety of categories, including security, performance, reliability, design, and popularity. And so it's over 5,740 APIs.
Wow.
And you might wonder, like, why would I need this? Well, oftentimes you write demos or you're testing out frameworks or whatever. These and other things you can utilize APIs for. And not only that, obviously these APIs allow you to stitch things together and make, evolve your application to incorporate these capabilities. So APIrank.dev is the website. And I thought folks might find that interesting. There is a sub-project, which is the State of Public APIs report. So I love these state of whatever reports. And so you can see that this is yet another report that was generated as part of this. And these are from the folks who do escape.tech. And I thought this was really cool. So this is updated as of March 3rd, 2023. So if you're at all interested about what folks are doing relative to their API strategies, et cetera, this would be a report you could take a look at to compare yourself to what others are doing. So that's APIrank.dev.
Yeah.
Moving right along. All right. So last week we talked about Postman, and in particular we talked about their flows feature, which had been evolved to incorporate things like control flow, etc. This one is from the folks who build Total.js. So Total.js is basically a whole collection of JavaScript libraries. And you can utilize this, obviously, if you wish. It's kind of like an all-encompassing solution. They've added a new capability called Flow. And what Flow is basically providing you a visual programming interface on top of that. So I thought this was cool. Like, it's basically giving you a similar type of concept to what we saw with Postman last week. And so there's a video here which talks a little bit about it. I'll just scroll forward here. They give a little bit of a demo right there. All right. So
is this a feature to expose to the users, or a way to develop the applications that you would?
A way to develop the applications.
Right.
Although I would suspect you could probably expose this to users as well if you felt compelled. So that's Total.js, and the Flow apps is basically a low-code, no-code development interface accessible through a web browser. This tool integrates processes and transforms various events and data in real time, which is cool. Now, I saw this and I thought this was a good article, and I wanted to bring this to the attention of folks who are watching this. This is an article from the folks over at GitLab, excuse me, and it's entitled, "Is the National Cybersecurity Strategy a Wake-Up Call for Software Developers?" This is referencing a recent policy document that came from the White House. This dropped last week, and it is their National Cybersecurity Strategy for 2023. And as we know, in our industry, we've had all kinds of things that have happened. If you've read the news, you know that supply chain attacks are a thing. When we publish software and we're publishing things like bill of materials, and we're making sure that we're validating signatures, etc. And it's very important because a lot of national infrastructure within the US and in other countries, let's face it, relies so much depending on cyber and digital systems standing up, because they're now critical infrastructure. So our hospitals, our schools, our places of government, etc. And so this is a policy that describes some of the things that are necessary, and they're shaping the sort of top-down vision of what they envision around this. Obviously, this plays into DevSecOps, which basically means that you're doing DevOps and you must do security as part of the entire software development lifecycle. And so they talk about things like making sure you have secure supply chain management, including all your source, your build, your dependencies, release artifacts, etc. A lot of this sounds familiar. This is a lot of what we do at Octopus, right? And so making sure that we have an inventory of software used using an SBOM or software bill of materials, etc., etc. So the cybersecurity strategy is an outline for this, but I think that this is a good way of describing this, which is basically, I guess the thesis here is that software developers tend to kind of either they don't realize that they should probably do this, and if they do know that they probably should do this, then maybe they don't do it. I don't know, but basically, this is laying out the fact that some of these are going, are mandated or recommended by government, and so it's incumbent upon us as developers to make sure that we're making sure that supply chains are secure and that we're having due diligence and making sure that we're using two-factor authentication with GitHub, for example. Like, all these things matter. And so I think this is a good way of framing this, is that we need to evolve or elevate the conversation up into the developer space that, hey, this is important. We're building software that is critical, that is relied upon. And we need to make sure that the things that we're shipping are secure and safe.
Yeah, it's a super interesting change in the environment and the way of thinking about things, isn't it? Like, this is now coming out of government. It's always going to be an arms race, right? Like, and we are getting better at it, but this might really kick that thing down the road a little bit and get things moving.
Yeah. So I think it's a good thing. I think we have a lot of things in place. So I think of things like the Notary project from the CNCF, or I think of things like even Open Policy Agent, which we just talked about. Those are good initiatives, I think, as well. SBOMs, obviously. A lot of stuff is a bit complicated, though. Like, if you read the specs for software bill of materials, it's not an easy read. It's pretty hard. And so it could also get really gnarly as well. Like, even creating these things can be difficult. So I think we have a ways to go, but I'm like you, I'm optimistic, and I think that it's a good thing that we do these things.
100%.
All right. We'll wrap up with some lighter things. Jim, I know you got a bunch of floppies kicking around. Do you have a floppy in your office?
No.
Are you sure?
This when I saw it. No, I don't have. I don't think I've got a single one left.
Okay. I do remember playing
boxes and boxes and boxes.
Yeah. You used to get the carrying trays and all that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I remember forever everyone was like, "Don't touch the film." Like, I'm using this as a prop, but I remember I would always flick the metal part back and forth, and everyone's like, "You can't touch that part." I'm like, whatever. So
they flew really well across the room as well.
They did. I preferred the 5.25s as opposed to the 3.5s. Yeah. They were a little bit more fun to play with. I never made an airplane either, but yeah. That's right. I have a dog who chews on everything in our house. I'm sure if we still had floppies, she would have eaten all of them. Anyways, this was an article that was posted on Ars Technica, and I thought it was quite funny because basically talking about how floppies aren't dying. It's still a thing. And despite everyone's assertions that, it's the cloud and, Dropbox and OneDrive and blah, blah, blah. It's like, no, there's a reason why this is the save icon,
Yeah.
So,
that's what I thought we were talking about, aren't we? Just the save icon.
That's right. That is what it is. Talk to any kid who's born after 1990. They'll be like, "Oh, what is?" I never knew what that thing was. I'm like, "Yeah, it's this thing." Anyways, this is an article that just basically talks about how in various parts of the world they're still using floppies everywhere, and one of the places where they're using it is one of our favorite places, Chuck E. Cheese. Now, Jim, I know you don't know what this is. This isn't an Australian thing.
Chuck E. Cheese is well known enough that it actually seeps in through popular culture anyway.
There you go. So for those folks, again, who are born after 1990, this is kind of like a Dave & Buster's. So Dave & Buster's is the modern day equivalent of Chuck E. Cheese or Bullwinkle's. Anyways, this was an article written on Gizmodo that relates, obviously, and they still use floppy disk to control what they call their nightmare machines. So what they're referring to are those animatronics that appear on stage. So when you go to Chuck E. Cheese or you go to Bullwinkle's, typically what happens is your parents will give you a bunch. Well, when I was a kid, your parents would give you a bunch of money, typically about $10 or $20, and you'd stuff your pants full of quarters or tokens. And that would keep you busy for about 2 to 3 hours. Then the parents, and this was the 80s, so whatever, the parents would sit in that room with all the animatronics and proceed to get obliterated. They would get drunk as skunks, drinking beer and eating bad pizza. And they had to suffer through, I feel so bad now that I think about it. They had to suffer through these really bad shows. So these shows would play in that room where everyone was sitting to keep the kids entertained. And they were just these really bad animatronics, and they would catch on fire or whatever. Anyways, the whole point of this is basically there was a TikTok video that was posted. I don't know if there it is, where this guy whose account name is Showbiz Pizza Man talks about how he's showing how they run the software for these robots. So he takes a floppy and he sticks it in basically a machine here that controls the robots. And yeah, floppies are still used. So there's the Chuck E. Cheese floppy disk to load the software for running the animatronics. So if you've ever felt like, who designed all this? Like, what developer, had to suffer through programming these things? This is where it ended up, in the back room on a server on a floppy.
If only there was some way to deploy that software automatically.
I know. If there was only like a solution out there that did deployments. Imagine that. Well, I guess we can't argue with the way they do things. I mean, like the article previously said, they still exist. They still get used. And to round things off, NESFab. Did you have an NES, a Super Nintendo guy, or are you an NES fan, or Sega?
My best friend, when I was that age, had one, and I spent a lot of time at his house.
So again, for folks born after 1990, an NES stands for Nintendo Entertainment System. This is a little box that could probably be fabricated the size of your AirPod case now. But basically, back in the day, it was this massive brick that would sit underneath your television, and had games that you probably know now, like Super Mario, etc. And so NESFab is a new programming language for creating NES games. And so if you're at all compelled to program this thing, this is basically a new language that we have, and you can run it on circuit boards, and you can load assets, and just goes to show they never stop evolving the state of the art around things like NES. I would imagine they're probably looking at if they can program Doom for the NES.
100%.
I mean, you can run Doom now on a Lego brick. I've seen Doom on a Lego brick. I've seen it on a pregnancy test. I've seen it on a variety of IoT devices as well. Just goes to show that if there's a device that has an LED and some kind of logic board behind it, it will run Doom, or it will run some game meant for the NES. So if you're at all curious, you can check out NESFab. And with that wraps up the week of news. So yeah, lots of really cool stuff. We've been all over the gamut there. So Jim, thanks again for joining me on this episode of Deploy on Friday. Obviously, if you're new to this channel, please make sure to like and subscribe to this video. We're here every week on Friday, which is the appropriate time to deploy. And yeah, thanks a lot, Jim. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, man. It's great.